Hi there, Dance Studio owner. It's Clint Salty here, founder of the Dance Studio Owners Association. Welcome to 2020. Great to have you with us. And over the next 6 weeks, I'm bringing you a brand new series where I've actually been interviewed by the incredible Lauren Ritchie from the Dance Podcast. Now, in these 6 episodes, we're going to talk about everything from feeling relevant now in the fast-moving pace with technology, how to be an authentic leader, what happens when you feel complacent in your business and you're kind of just tracking along and you kind of don't want anything else, how to get that motivation and edge. We're going to talk about disrupting the norm and how do you stand out from all of the other dance studios that are in your local area. We talk about expectations of yourself, of your team members, how to get the most out of your team, and also how to not be fearful of other people's opinions and to make sure that you are running your dance studio and nobody else is. It's an incredible, wide-ranging conversation Lauren and I are having over these next 6 weeks, and I am so excited to share it with you. Before we get into it, we have also opened the doors to our Inner Circle program where my team and I work closely with a group of studio owners. If you want more details on that program, go to dsoa.com/inner circle. Now let's get on with the show.
Welcome to Transform My Dance Studio podcast. My name is Lauren Ritchie, and I have had the privilege of doing a series with Clint. We connected on my podcast, the Dance Podcast, many years ago, and we truly shared so many similar philosophies and values and interests and got into some of the best conversations. And so I was extremely honored when Clint said, hey, do you want to jam again for 6 sessions on different topics that would be so incredibly valuable for the dance studio owners? So thank you again, Clint, for having me.
Love it. Yeah, it's such a pleasure to chat with you.
Yeah. Well, today's going to be a big one. Because I'm calling it expectations.
Oh yes, our favorite.
Our favorite. And what I've really loved in more of like the personal development side is really recognizing how many things and how many disappointments are often connected with expectations. And as leaders and as studio owners, the more that we can sort of dive into this topic, I think that we'll all just be happier humans.
Oh, 100%, 100%.
So I thought we would do a little bit of a journey of knowing that you work with people who have just opened a studio, who've had it for 25 years, some super, super successful and they just want to grow. Others are needing some TLC. What would you say have been the biggest sort of maybe expectation hangovers from opening a studio? Owners that they thought it was going to be one thing, and most have to learn certain lessons or realize they had certain expectations.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing is, as most of us have started as dancers or dance teachers, and we decide to open a studio, and we can all remember that vision of like, we're going to have all these students and like at the building's going to look like this and this colors and this logo, and I'm going to drive a beautiful BMW and I'm going to go on holidays and I'm going to have freedom and I'm going to create the studio that I've always wanted to be at. And that's a really exciting place to be. And we need that excitement to propel us into the place of like opening our studio. But for early studio owners who might be listening, maybe generally this is like in year 1 to 3, you start realizing a couple of things. Firstly, you realize, wow, this is a lot more work than I thought. I'm working 70, 80 hours a week. I am doing everything. I am, balancing the books in the morning. I'm teaching 4 or 5 hours at night. I'm going home, I'm cutting and editing music, I'm picking costumes the next morning, I'm, lining up to book the recital event, the recital venue. I mean, plus I'm dealing with text messages and Facebook messages from parents, teachers calling in sick. I mean, you name it, it's all on you at the very beginning. And I often look back at my years, when I started running my dance studio, and although it was hectic and chaotic, you learn very, very quickly. Like, because if you don't learn, your studio is not around much longer, because you probably like have a breakdown and that's it, and you go and do something else, right? Because it takes someone that is very, very strong, persistent, and resilient to run a studio, and especially run a successful studio. And so time is the first thing a lot of people are surprised by. I didn't realize how hard I'd be working, especially if you've been a teacher and you kind of like come in, teach your class, go home, prepare your lessons like in the car as you're driving, listening to music, is very, very different. That is a very small slither of the studio CEO pie. And there's so much else that you've got to learn. You've got to learn about your numbers. You've got to learn about leadership. You've got to learn about communication, which we talked about in our last episode. So there's a whole lot of things going on. You probably also realize that it's actually quite expensive to run a dance studio. Expenses are always one that comes up in those first few years that people are really surprised at. They think once they've done a fit out, they've done a lease and they've done a fit out, that it's like pretty easy sailing. But it's not. Unfortunately, with a dance studio, the business model relies on space. So venue space, and it's not like it's not a Soul Cycle model where you can fit 50 bikes in a tiny closet, and make $35 a bike running, 6 to 7 classes a day. It's very different. You need big space for lots of bodies who are generally not paying a lot of money, right? That is the business model. If we look at the model for most studios, about 85-90% of studios, it's a volume business model, which means the idea is that you're getting the most amount of students as possible, doing the most amount of classes as possible, and buying a whole bunch of other stuff from you as well, right? Like that is the unemotional version of the dance studio, right? And so it's a tricky model, because to be able to do that, you need plenty of space. And when you end up having plenty of space, you need plenty of teachers to be able to teach those spaces, and all of that is wages and rent. So you've got a lot of money generally that you've got to pay, unless you go in smart, which I hope a lot of people listening to this do at the beginning. And the smart studio owners have one space that's full 6 days a week. It's the most profitable dance studio you will ever have, is one space that's full 6 days a week. And you're offering them other services and products that they can purchase from you, as well as doing more than one class a week. So that's always a surprise. And then when we work with people, often we get them saying like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize how much I didn't know, because they were just like doing their thing, right? They're like running the studio because the studio they went to ran it this way. So they're running it the way their old studio owner ran it. And so we get in this cycle. And so they're like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that I've actually been running this really inefficiently, the last 10 years. And so we get a lot of people coming to us who have maybe heard about us and thought like, oh, I don't want to make all of those mistakes. I don't want to spend all of that money trying to figure it out. I just want to know what works. Or people that have been in it. One of our members today I was talking to, 33 years in her studio. And she's like, oh my goodness, she's been with us for about 2 years now. And she's like, I just can't tell you how much I wish you were around like 30 years ago, And so, and I love it though. She's a part of our family now. So that's fantastic. But look, there's some of the, when it comes to expectations, these are where, new studio owners can get a little bit beaten down. But it's not doom and gloom, right? With the right pricing model, it's the first thing everyone should be working on is, what is my pricing model? And your pricing model is not, okay, what do they charge up the road? What do they charge down the road? I'll just charge something in the middle. That is like the worst way for you to price anything. You need to know your expenses and you need to know your costs, and not only your expenses and costs today, but what could the next 3 years look like? Because if you're thinking of opening multiple spaces or moving to a new place that has 3 rooms with more teachers, your class cost is definitely going to go up versus if it's just you teaching 30 hours a week in one space. And so you have to know where you're headed to price correctly for that growth that you're going to have, because you can't say to a parent, oh, it's $12 a class, and then in 2 years say, oh, now it's $24 a class because I priced my business incorrectly because I thought I'd be teaching for the rest of my life. Yeah. It's really tricky. So initially, there's some of the things around expectation that come up.
Cool. I like that. One thing I noticed as a teacher who goes into many different studios, I come with a series of expectations of how I run my class, what I expect from the dancers. Perhaps I have expectations around working with studio directors, what pay looks like, what invoices, all the rest, what my work will look like being carried forward. These are all sort of things that I've just noticed, not the same between all. And so what I'm starting to do now is really I start with the conversation of what my expectations are. If I'm coming in to set a piece, my expectation is that you're already warmed up for 30 minutes out in the lobby and you're coming in warm and ready. And I feel like if I tell them that at the beginning, expectation is laid out, then we can move forward. Whether it's done or not done is the conversation. And I'm wondering, how do you coach directors into these many expectation conversations?
Yeah, great question. So there's two types of expectations. There's performance expectations. And so performance expectations around results, outcomes, it's like the routine delivered for the competition by this date, costumes picked by this date. This is how I want you to, run your classes. This is how we'll work with you. And then there's behavioral expectations. Okay, so they're about how does your team members, how do they live your values? What attitude are they coming in with? What behavior are they coming into your studio with? So there's those two things that are really, really important. And so you've got to get clear on those. But before you can have an expectation conversation, you need to know yourself clearly as the owner what your expectations are. And I think this is where it gets really tricky, because if you're not clear, and for me, expectations are black and white. Right? They're black and white. Expectations should not be vague. Well, I kind of want you to kind of do something like that. That is not helpful for anyone, because your version of that and my version of that are very, very different. And this is where I see a lot of issues come up with studio owners and their faculty and their team members. So you need to have written down, let's say if we're looking at faculty like broadly, right? Okay, what are the expectations that you have for any faculty member that joins your studio, right? And the best way to do that is think of your favorite faculty members and write down their qualities, right? What do you love? Well, I love that they turn up 10 minutes before class. I love that they won't wait 2 days to text me back. So great response rate. I love when they invoice me with the correct details on the same date every month. Set the expectation and look at both types, behavioral and performance expectations, right? So we want to make sure that we're covering both of those facets. The other thing is I talked about this in a previous episode, but you can't also dictate things, right? You have to make sure that you're explaining the why behind everything. And believe me, this gets exhausting. And I know sometimes when I'm like in that dictator mode of like, okay, I need you to go and do this, and then I get it back and it's wrong, I'm like, oh, I didn't explain the why. And I'm consistently, I'm catching myself going, oh, tell them the why, because my brain just works a little differently, as probably some people on the call, is that I just I don't really need to know the why. I just need to know the instruction. But broadly, people need to know the why, and it's actually really beneficial for you to explain the why so that they're on board. That'll give people a little more clarity as well when you're setting the expectation. Mm-hmm. A big problem I see is, okay, so we do this process, right? We set the expectation and then we think we're done, right? As the owner, I'm like, cool, I told you what I needed. You should be good now, right? For the rest of the time that you're working at my studio for the next 5 years, I'll never have to tell you my expectations again because I just explained it to you. Now, here's the thing. We've talked about communication a lot. It's all about communication, continual reminders, right? You want to be consistently reminding people on your expectations, not only when they don't meet your expectation, but even when they do, right? You want to make sure that this is just ingrained. Here's my expectation. An expectation can be framed really nicely through core values, right? No one can ever argue with a core value. And so always relate everything back to a core value. It's really helpful. And you need them to commit and agree to the expectation. Just because you said something doesn't mean that they agree with it. And so this is where a two-way conversation has to happen. And Lauren, as you mentioned around when you go into a studio, you have like your list of things and you realize, hey, not everyone operates this way. A couple do, a couple don't, and a couple are crazy. We have to make sure that we are getting agreement from both sides. Okay, hey, do you mind repeating back to me that expectation around you coming to class 10 minutes before, or whatever it is, but just getting them repeating it back. And it feels silly sometimes, but again, this just helps make sure that there's like not going to be any drama or chaos or miscommunication. I mean, there's always going to be some of that stuff, but we want to eliminate as much of it as possible. That's the key. So I found like this kind of process helps. Once you've got the agreement, you want to make sure that you are getting feedback. So expectations change. Sometimes people reach or go above your expectation, some of your team members. Sometimes they don't, which probably means there's stuff going on for them. So we want to make sure that we're getting feedback and it's constant dialogue, constant dialogue. So that's like kind of the process we walk through around setting expectations, but ensuring that everyone is always on the same page. Well, I'm not going to say always, but you're as much as possible, you're on the same page.
Mm-hmm. What I love is that as you were talking, just because I spend so much time with the dancers, I'm going, yeah, you can do all of that with the dancers.
Oh, well. Yeah.
And the parents. Because
totally.
Yeah, I noticed coming into a studio and working, as much as I had to educate the dancers, they don't drive themselves to the studio. And so we had to have even a bigger conversation about expectations and why, like, your dancer is going to get hurt if they do not come early. And I went so far as to give some of the parents were like, they tell me that they're warming up, but I don't know if they actually are. Okay, great. We're actually going to make even more clarity around what that looks like and how to support them. So I love these kinds of conversations.
Yeah, I mean, it should go through, like, expectations are needed in all parts of our life. Mm-hmm. And so this exercise is useful with your husband or wife or your partner. It's useful with your co-owner of your studio, business partners, students, parents, staff, everyone.
And what I'll share from a personal experience is I can tell you the times that the studio directors commented on how much they appreciate what I was doing right. I can literally tell you exactly what they said to me because I went, okay, thank you. Because I'm trying, I personally try really hard to make their life easier.
Sure.
And maintain core values. If I'm going to be a part of the family, I want to contribute. And it does. It means so much when you get acknowledged for just the small choices that you're making that are in alignment.
Yeah. I mean, it's always nice. And I am not it reminds me of one of my team members last week. They said something to me. I am not a big complimenter of my team members. If they do something that I'm like, that was amazing, I'll say like, hey, congratulations. That was really great. And they know, like, if I say that, they know it's incredible. And I said to one of my team members who was performing really well during a week where a couple of team members were out due to some family things that were going on, and she really stepped up. And I, sent her a message. I said, hey, you've been so incredible this week. Thank you so much. You've been really helpful, and I just really appreciate you. And she wrote back and she said, thank you. I really appreciate being appreciated. you know, and I was like, yeah. And it made me think like, I do need to do that more often, but not too frequently, you know, because I do have, you know, and I say this to our owners, I am not going to congratulate you for doing your job every day. You know, like I am not going to do that, but I will let you know when you are doing you know, a wonderful job. I'm going to let you know.
Yeah. I imagine some of the dancers I work with might say the same about my teaching strategies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all, you know, everyone's kind of built differently and need different things. And I think that's the other thing is, you know, we're so complicated as human beings. And it is tricky, like managing students or managing faculty or whoever you are managing and leading, but trying your best to like understand what motivates your team or your students, what lights them up, what gives them energy, what brings them down, how do you build them back up? You know, all of these skill sets we use with our faculty, but with our teachers, students, parents. I mean, these are all things that can be used across the entire studio.
Mm-hmm. How do you, as a coach and somebody who really is side by side with these business owners in such an intimate and personal way. So many studio owners, you know, call their studio their first baby.
Yeah. And favorite.
Yeah. I know from a mental skills training side what I would suggest for this or what I anticipate, but I believe you have such an intimate and special relationship. How do you support studio directors when their expectations are not met or when there's just a lot of disappointment? And maybe they were realistic expectations, maybe they were unrealistic, I don't know. But how do you coach them through that?
Yeah, it's tricky. I think most of the coaching actually is done before they set the expectation, right? So I think when I'm setting goals with them, for example, right, this is something that we do every quarter. We do 90-day planning with all of our inner circle family, and we go through the goal setting process and why I want them to achieve big things and stretch themselves. I'm also preparing them in that situation that, hey, this might not happen, right? This goal might not happen, and letting them know that it is completely okay and it's actually really required for you not to achieve and knock every single goal out of the park every single time, because you've got to build resilience, right? The main quality I see now, really successful studio owners, you know, those who are doing over $1 million a year, that have over 1,000 students, they are resilient, right? They're like these super women that are like flying around in the world, really resilient. So I actually think it's good. It's kind of good not to win all of the time, because you build your muscles up in other areas that are going to be important for you as you continue to grow and scale a business. So I try and do as much as I can before we get to the disappointment stage, so that we can build some acceptance around it. Right. And I know when we don't hit our targets, and it happens often because we set big targets. I'm like, yeah, cool. Like, we know this was going to happen. The most important thing in that area of disappointment is, what did I learn? You know, and it could be disappointment because you don't hit the retention rate you want when you start a new season, right? The students that you thought would re-enroll don't. It could be disappointment because someone you've been training for 12 years is going to another studio. It could be that you're a long-time teacher that you've had, that you've been training up since they were, 12, opens up their own dance studio. You know, it could be you don't hit the numbers you want, or your profitability has dropped this year. You know, we get disappointed. I believe disappointment is something that we feel on different levels every single day of our life. But acceptance around disappointment is like one of the most magical things you can have. And then, what am I learning from this experience? Like, that is key. And that is like, I'm just so obsessed with feedback in all areas of my life. And especially for myself, if I'm feeling something, it's like, oh, okay, what am I learning from this? What am I learning from this experience? And I don't always do better. We're human, we fail. But the learnings, it's why we debrief every project. It's why we debrief every event that we run, because we're always looking for the feedback in the failure. And so I think that is important versus, okay, now you're disappointed, you're on the floor, you're a mess. How do I pick you back up? Right? Because to be honest with you, we have coaches that help our members on mindset. And for me, I'm good on the front end of let's prepare you in case this is a disaster. And then if you fall apart as a collective, we help bring you back up. But we're very much about you, learn, keep moving forward. Mm-hmm. There is certainly a time to grieve and feel disappointed. It's part of it's the beautiful piece of being a human being. We get to feel all these different emotions, so we know what joy is. But I don't want you in there for too long. Mm-hmm. I don't want you sitting in what one of my friends, Terry Hawkins, calls the pit of misery. I don't want you sitting in the pit of misery for too long. Us as the group, I want, and Terry talks about this, we want to all throw you the ladder to get you out of the pit, climb out of the pit so we can keep moving forward.
Yeah. Beautiful. I know. And I'm so happy that you mentioned so much of the disappointment that I've witnessed, and I've been a part of it in a couple different ways, is really that personal side. When you have the students who leave after so many years, the amount that feels personal, I feel, is just so deeply weighted. It seems like every dance studio director goes through it at some point. And I love the idea that there's a community of people to help and support and guide and throw the ladder.
Throw the ladder into the pit of misery and climb out of there. Climb out of that pit of misery.
Yeah. Again, I just love that so much of what you talk about is directly related to the experience that we offer the dancers and that we can bring in. And something that I do know from some of my work is just the amount of courage it takes to hear the feedback and then to really sit in it, own it, explore it. It's not always comfortable when you realize that you have been let down or that expectation maybe was there and you didn't even know it was there. I mean, that's courageous leadership, in my opinion.
Oh, yes.
And to surround yourself with a group of people who are willing to share in that courage is truly magical.
Oh, it's incredible, and it's powerful, and it helps you to keep moving forward. Community is everything. And I feel for studio owners or choreographers or teachers that feel like I'm doing this alone, like I am isolated on this journey. It's a journey that should be shared. And that's why I just love, I love the work that we're able to do, because it's definitely not about me. It's about the incredible collective of people that we bring together.
And I can speak firsthand. I know some of those humans and they are magic and I love them so much.
They're amazing. Yes, they are.
So if people would like to join the community and they're feeling perhaps like they want that support or the coaching, how can they find you? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, definitely. Guys, go to dsoa.com. You'll find plenty of free resources there. But if you want the coaching, the community, the systems and processes for growing your studio and reclaiming your life, like we've talked about, you can go to dsoa.com/the inner circle. Not the inner circle, just inner circle. Go to our website, find the inner circle, and you can find out all about this pretty incredible group coaching program that we do. And if it's the right fit for you and you're a great fit for us, we'd love to work with you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Clint.
Thanks, Lauren. Thank you so much for listening to our episode today of the Transform My Dance Studio podcast. Now, if you'd love to work with me and my team and an incredible group of studio owners from all around the globe, I want to encourage you to check out our Inner Circle program. Just go to dsoa.com/inner circle and apply today to work with us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Take care and bye for now.